Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn entitled The Specialty Courts, hosted by Women's Political Collaborative of Tennessee. I would like to give a very special welcome to our guests. Thank you so much for being here today. Guests, if you enjoyed today's Lunch and Learn and would like to have access to all of the great programming that WPCTN has to offer, we would love to have you join as a member. If you would like to join or learn more about WPC and our educational and advocacy efforts, you can visit WPCTN.com. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to keep their videos off and their mics muted. Today's panel moderator is Laura Smith. Laura is Vice President and General Counsel for Nashville Electric Service, where she oversees all legal matters, local, state, and federal government relations, community involvement, claims, regulatory compliance, economic development, and business continuity and strategic planning. Laura is an avid community volunteer. She's served as President of the Nashville Bar Association in 2019, as the Chair of President of numerous nonprofits, including the Women's Fund of the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, 50 Forward, Cable, Big Brothers of Nashville, Women in Numbers, and WPC. I'm now going to turn it over to Laura as she introduces our panelists for today.
Thank you so much, Tabitha. It's really an honor to moderate this panel today with two incredible judges, both of whom I'm privileged to call my friends. Before I introduce them, though, we generally like to recognize elected officials. And I will note that school board member Frida Player is on our Zoom today. We'll try to be mindful of other public officials as they join so that they can be properly recognized. So let me introduce our esteemed panelists to you. I'll start with Judge Melissa Blackburn. She's Judge of Division 2 of the General Sessions Court. She was elected to that position in August of 2014. Before she became a judge, her law practice focused on employment discrimination and unfair wage practices. Now, Judge Blackburn is a Nashville native. She attended Lipscomb University and the Nashville School of Law. And as you all know, she oversees a couple of specialty courts in Nashville. So she's the presiding judge of the Mental Health Court and the Veterans Court. We're, of course, going to talk about those in greater detail. Judge Blackburn is really engaged in the community, and so in particular the Nashville Bar Association and a variety of civic organizations involving children and marginalized populations. So welcome, Judge Blackburn. I'd also like to welcome Judge Allegra Walker, and she is Judge of Division 4 of General Sessions. She also was elected to that position in August of 2014. Prior to her election to judge, she was an assistant district attorney for Davidson County, and her focus there was on domestic violence. She's an alumna of Fisk University and the University of Toledo College of Law. She serves as the presiding judge for Nashville's Environmental Court, and like Judge Blackburn, Judge Walker is extremely involved in the Nashville community. Specifically, she served in leadership positions with organizations like the Coalition of 100 Black Women, the General Alumni Association of Fisk University, where she was their general counsel, the Napier Luby Bar Association, and Music City Kiwanis. Welcome to Judge Walker.
Thank you.
We're really delighted to have both of you with us today. And as you know, we'd like to explore Nashville's specialty courts in a little bit of detail. So we've got a number of lawyers who are on here who might be familiar with the specialty courts, but a lot of folks who are just really interested in finding more about what you all do. Would you take just a minute or two to each address the specialty courts over which you preside? And I'd like to start with you, Judge Blackburn.
I preside over both the mental health and veterans courts. They are specialty treatment courts, which are alternative to the regular criminal probation tracks. They are case intensive. They're based on the individual. Depending on where that individual is when they come into the court system, they can be referred by either the attorney, the judge, the probation officer, or anyone else that's working with that individual as they come through the criminal justice system. We address the psychological issues, and that can be from the mental health standpoint or in a veteran, whether they have PTSD, whether they have a traumatic brain injury, or whether they have some other related injury from their service to the country. And we take them as we find them, as anyone does when you're dealing with someone as they come into the criminal justice system. But these are ways that we can provide additional services to someone that may have additional needs. And it's a way that we can get them hopefully out of the criminal justice system and help prevent them from committing additional crimes and get them on with their life. If they successfully complete either the mental health or veterans court, we hopefully are able to expunge their record and forgive all their fines and fees.
Thanks, Judge Blackburn. So when I started practicing law back in 1993, those courts didn't exist. How did those courts come to be in Nashville?
Well, in 2001, Judge Fishburne founded one of the first mental health courts in the country. And that court has been in existence since 2001. I, in 2014, founded the Veterans Treatment Court here in Davidson County. That originated in Buffalo, New York with Judge Russell in 2008. And that has been in existence here since 2014. And both of those courts originated from a need that was seen in the individuals coming through the criminal justice system. Currently, the largest provider of mental health services in Davidson County is Sheriff Darren Hall. He provides more mental health services than anyone else in this county because the majority of individuals, and I'm sure Judge Walker will agree based on the population she sees, that come through the criminal justice system have some type of mental health need. Now, whether they have ever received any treatment or not, that's another whole issue, or whether they acknowledge that they need some type of mental health services, that's also another issue. But addressing that mental health need and trying to get them on medication or some type of counseling service to help them.
Thank you so much, Judge
What
Black.
they need. Go ahead.
I think we have some connection problems, but I just wanted to thank you for giving us insights into that. And I know we'll revisit some of the things that you brought up. Judge Walker, do you want to give us some insights into your specialty courts?
So my specialty court is environmental court, and I oversee environmental court. And of course, I have a referee that generally does the day-to-day operations of environmental court. And where I come in, I will hear the appeals for environmental court. So referee Renard Hirsch is on the line today. So he does see the day-to-day operations. So with environmental court, we are responsible for dealing with environmental issues. So that would be code violations, ordinance violations. We also do short-term rental violations as well. So it's a good hodgepodge of civil work. I really enjoy it, and to be honest, it's an area that's rapidly changing. I'll just say that. Short-term rentals has provided us lots of work, and now that we have COVID going on, all those restaurants and bars that are shut will refuse to shut down or refuse to have their employees masked. That comes through environmental court. So it's always changing, and it's an interesting area.
So Judge Walker, I'm glad you brought up COVID, because one of the things I think everybody is interested in learning is how the courts are operating during this really unprecedented time. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how that's impacted your court and how you're managing to continue to operate, because our realities are so different these days?
So it has had dramatic impact throughout entire general sessions. Just let's say that. Our dockets, they're backed up for some months, to be honest. So when we started, we shut down mid-March. We came back online in June. So we didn't hear any cases in environmental court. And I would do an occasional Zoom if it was really something that was required. So now we're hearing cases. It's a limited basis, but we are hearing cases just to keep the train rolling.
And is there any priority set to the cases that you're hearing right now in environmental court, or is it a regular docket?
So we will have a regular docket. The priority cases are going to be those cases involving COVID violations. But yeah, we're hearing regular docket.
Interesting. And then Judge Blackburn, we were talking before the rest of the group came on about some really interesting things regarding COVID operations. Tell us a little bit about how COVID's impacted your courts.
Well, we never stopped. When the courts shut down in March, we just changed the way we are dealing with things. We have continued to serve the population and to continue to accept individuals into mental health and veterans court. We've just been doing them remotely as opposed to seeing them face to face. We've continued to conduct court. My staff are continuing to talk to their clients on a daily basis because our clients have drug and alcohol issues, probably 99% of them, they're still going for drug and alcohol testing. My staff is continuing to speak to each of their clients on a daily basis to ensure that they're safe, that they are staying drug and alcohol free, that they're continuing to meet with their mental health counselors, that they're going to all their appointments, and they're staying safe. So each of my staff are continuing to make those phone calls on a daily basis. So they're speaking with each of their clients every 24 hours. If they're not able to reach someone within 24 hours, we're issuing a warrant for that individual to come into the courthouse, and we're seeing them on a docket. That docket may be conducted by Zoom because that individual may be in jail and Sheriff Hall may not be transporting those individuals to the courthouse, so we're making accommodations. So we're able to conduct those dockets. So those individuals are still having justice, even though they may be in the jail, we may be in the courthouse, or we may be on a remote location. Court is still being conducted. And my staff, I know some of the politicians have suggested that all Metro employees should be furloughed because they're not working. Well, I can guarantee any politician that doesn't think Metro employees are working, and probably Judge Walker will second this, we're all working. We're all calling in. We're still conducting our jobs as are all of our staff.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. So Judge Walker, Judge Blackburn was talking about how unique her court is in serving the people who come through the courts. Your court's really different. And so right now you are, and for the last couple of years, you've been dealing with some kind of front of mind issues in our community, including short-term rentals and including COVID. Talk a little bit about what's happening in those areas and the kind of cases you hear and how that impacts the community.
So I think one of the major impacts of the community with that docket is the code violations that come through. More specifically, when we talk about community, the junk, trash, and debris. So I will hear those cases where we have the neighbors who will not do right, who have cars lined up, who will not mow their grass, who let their dogs run loose, and they occasionally will bite people. So I hear those kind of cases, and that directly impacts the community because the community gets all up in arms over folks like that, and I understand why they do. But the other piece that impacts the community are the short-term rentals. So, and that's had, we've received quite a buzz in Nashville about short-term rentals. Either you love them or you hate them, and there is no middle ground with that. So with that, you get people who get fired up when they live next to a short-term rental or it's on their block, and you got the weekend parties, the bachelorette parties that are lined up, and people partying outside and leaving trash and just doing things that they do. So that's a very hot topic in environmental court, as well as the people who own them don't necessarily live in Nashville, and they don't really have control, or they're not managing those properties. Or they don't have a permit to have those properties. So it's a highly litigated little area. They come lawyered up, trying to salvage whatever they need to salvage, because at the end of the day, they make a lot of money on short-term rentals. So it's a lot at stake. So those are two real issues that kind of affect the neighborhood with environmental court.
I would expect that during the pandemic that you would see probably a fewer number of cases arising out of short-term rental issues, but clearly you've got a lot of things transitioning into COVID related. Is that true?
That is true. So pretty much short-term rentals almost kind of got shut down. Metro, I think we're on a limited schedule with being able to go out and do warrants, and the courts were kind of shut down, and the tourist industry was kind of shut down. So you really didn't have people that were here, coming here to get a short-term rental or Airbnb. So yeah, it really has taken a shift. And now we're seeing that shift taken off with the COVID-19 violations.
So Judge Blackburn, I'm interested to hear from you. Judge Walker shared with us some specific examples of how her court impacts like community-focused things. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how your courts have impacted the Nashville community, and having been a witness to some of the work that you've done in Veterans Court in particular, I'd love to hear some success stories.
Well, I'll give you one specific example. One of my recent graduates said, and I'll quote, "I'd be dead if it wasn't for this program." Now, to have a graduate at graduation stand up in front of the entire packed courtroom and say that, that's quite moving. Success in our program comes from completing the work and graduating. If a client stays clean, goes to his appointments or her appointments, listens to their caseworker, does all that's expected, that's staying off drugs and alcohol, taking your medication, going to your appointments, seeing specialists to court, they're eligible to have all their fines and fees waived, to have their cases expunged, and have their record cleaned. And more likely than not, when they graduate, they've got housing, they've got a job, and they've got a fresh start. This was an individual that was homeless, was high as a kite, and had an arm-long list of charges. His life began again, and he got a fresh start.
That's incredible. Judge Blackburn,
It was incredible.
Is the funding for the Veterans Court, does that come through just traditional court funding, or are there other mechanisms of funding for the special work that you guys do?
Veterans Court and Mental Health Court are funded totally separately. Veterans Court, when it started, was funded by a federal grant. Well, that ran out in 2017. Subsequently, the state of Tennessee has funded veterans courts by 2 or 3 different mechanisms. I obtained funding for every veterans court across the state through a bill that we got passed in 2014. It's startup funding. So anytime a veterans court wants to start in the state, there is funding through money that's attached to drug charges. So there's startup funding. But in addition, the Governor Haslam, put money in the budget to fund veterans courts in certain counties across the state. This governor, thank goodness, continued it. We hope subsequent governors will do the same, because we're at the mercy of the governors to fund veterans courts. We're not so lucky with mental health courts. Mental health courts are not funded by the state of Tennessee. We're at the mercy of the mayor and the council to fund mental health courts. So mental health courts aren't sexy. Mental health courts, mental health issues are not sexy, and you kind of want to shove them aside. So we are constantly begging for money for mental health court, for transitional housing, for transportation money, for any money we can ever get for mental health courts. Veterans courts are so much easier to obtain funding for, because you want to help a veteran. They serve the country. They deserve it. They've earned it.
So Judge Blackburn, on the funding piece, since you have a different mechanism of funding the veterans courts, are there any other opportunities through the state or foundations or anything to give you the support that you need for mental health courts? Or are you really going to be at the mercy of the mayor and the council?
We seek every single opportunity we have to seek funding. I know right now, Mark Winslow, who is in charge, he is in charge of the administrative piece of Mental Health and Veterans Court, just applied for funding through the CARES Act. I think it was $125,000 he was able to apply for. In fact, right before I began this, he and I were speaking about that funding and what he had applied for. I know that we have sought money through DOJ. There's a grant that we had obtained through DOJ. We applied for the largest amount we could. It was combined funding for both. We cannot ever take money from veterans funding and apply it to mental health. We're not allowed to do that. The state watches every single dime we have, and we have to ask, can we spend it for this? Can we do that? They're very specific, and they audit our money very, very closely. So we're very careful what we spend. But any opportunity we have with any foundations, we apply for.
And Judge Walker, is the funding for environmental courts, does that come through traditional funding mechanisms through the city, or do you have any special funding?
No special funding, it all comes through the city.
Okay. And I'm curious, we've talked a lot about successes that you've had and the cases that you've handled. Judge Blackburn's touched a little bit on needs that she has. I'm interested in hearing both of you elaborate a little bit on, are there any changes that need to be made in connection with Nashville specialty courts, or are there any needs that the two of you have that that are being unmet? Judge Walker, will you start us on that one?
Let's see, changes in needs. I think most recently, I think we were fortunate enough about a year or two ago to get some extra funding for the referee who hears cases. His salary had been set for about 20 years, and it was a need for there just to be a little increase. With that increase, we increased the number of times that we did a docket, because at the time we were a little behind with short-term rentals going crazy in court. So now we'll have court, 2 days a week instead of 1 day a week. And then I'll come in and hear the appeals 1 day a week. We were also able to, and I guess Metro Council kind of gave us some extra money, but we were able to get some more resources with Codes Department. They were, again, short-term rentals were going so crazy, they didn't have the resources to even go out and police that. So we've gotten extra funding to get, and I would say the Codes Department's got extra funding to get some more folks in there working in codes to go out and see what's going on in the community. I think we probably got another attorney that deals with short-term rental cases through the legal department. So our needs really aren't a whole lot, but the few things that we've needed, we've kind of gotten, and we can pretty much justify it with the caseload. That's never a hard justification with us, because the caseload has increased considerably over the years.
And Judge Walker, I know the referee, you said he hears cases 2 days a week and you hear appeals 1 day a week. What does the infrastructure look like for environmental court, just within the general sessions umbrella?
I'm not sure what you mean with that.
Do you have any other staff support, or is it really just the two of you in your respective
Oh,
court?
okay. So with that, it's Renard, myself. When I'm on the bench, I have my court officers and I have an administrative assistant that helps. Referee Hirsch can always, use the administrative assistant as well. And that's about it. We have a clerk and 2 clerks actually.
Okay.
And that's it. It runs it's not a whole lot, that we need to have that running, but that's kind of all that we have.
Understood. So Judge Blackburn, you touched on the financial needs in particular, but before we move on to a different topic, are there any other things that you'd like to mention, changes that need to be made or needs that you have?
Yes, one of my deepest challenges is overcoming the stigma of mental illness, both in the community and public support. One of the biggest problems I have is the individuals that I see in mental health court. Most of them, there is a stigma that too many people don't seek help for children that may have been presenting signs of mental illness as children. But because of the stigma or the embarrassment of mental illness, they fail to seek assistance for those children. And I've spoken to our new CEO of Vector Schools. I spoke to her 9 months ago when she was the interim and met with her and talked to her about this problem. It's clear to me that children in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade may be presenting with these issues. They're acting out. They have ADHD, whatever it is. They can't sit still. They're a disruption in the classroom. They're sent home. They're called out. They're sent to an alternative school. Something happens along the way. And there's a point where mother, dad, grandmother, somebody decides, I'm so sick and tired of picking this child up from school because this child is acting out or whatever. They stop taking that child to school, sending that child to school. That child drops out, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. That child never graduates from high school. That child, if it's a girl, she starts picking up charges. She probably starts stealing. Most of them have those charges and other things. The boys tend to pick up charges, etc. They're in the system. By the time I see them, they have 6, 8, 10, 15 charges. They've never graduated from high school. They are probably experiencing their first psychotic episode and they're in mental health court. So at that point, we're having to say to whatever family will have anything to do with them, look, we've got to stop. We've got to keep them in jail long enough to get them stable. Figure out what mental health issue they have and back up.
It's certainly not a traditional judicial position, is it?
No, it isn't. But in order to help that person and unring that bell, it takes a while. But I want to unring that bell back in junior high school. I want to stop that before it starts. And we can do that.
It sounds to me like there are a lot of synergies with what you do with, for example, Judge Sheila Calloway. And
well, yes.
I imagine you have a lot of opportunities for collaboration within the judicial system in Nashville.
Yes, but we can stop this.
I've asked a number of my own questions, and Joyce has fed me some questions from some of our participants. So I'm going to jump into some of those. And Judge Walker, we received a question from one of our participants, asking about mold. And so, does the environmental court address issues with mold? And if so, in what context is it? And specifically, she's asked, is it residential, commercial, or short-term rentals?
So the only time that I would address an issue of mold, if it comes in the context of being a violation of a code. So if it's a code violation, then it would come to me. So I guess I would see it. I don't think I've ever seen a mold case, but I think I probably would see it. I mean, codes would have to issue such a warrant for a violation. Let's say they went into a residential, they would be in a residence and maybe would issue that. I've never have seen that issue come up before. That doesn't mean it does not come up. I've just not seen it. But there are always things that come up. But that's how I think I would see it.
So I imagine you see a lot of diverse kinds of things in your capacity, Judge Walker. Are you at liberty to share with us, like, what's the craziest thing you've seen in environmental court?
Of course, we can't talk about cases, but
isn't it a matter of public record?
Kind of, sort of. I think I do have this case in my head. Probably the craziest thing was a person who they were a connoisseur of animals. I'll just say that.
A collector.
They had lots and lots of animals inside and out that they really didn't know what to do with. But that's probably the craziest. And I can't give all the details on that. I would love to. I would love to, actually, but I can't.
Well, I will ask a question of both of you. I think I'm guessing that your conversation today has piqued some interest from some of our participants. If somebody on this Zoom wanted to come down one day post-pandemic and watch the activities of the court, is that a possibility? Could they do that?
Absolutely.
Well, I encourage people to come to court, actually. I think, a lot of people don't know what we do in court. They don't understand. Sometimes it is quite entertaining to come to court. But so just for everybody out there, just beaming with curiosity, I'm there Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to whatever time I'm done. I do domestic violence court 8 months out the year, as well as—
Now that's the entertaining.
The order protection court is very entertaining as well. And then I do my environmental court docket every third Tuesday. And then Bernard Hirsch, who's the referee, is there on Tuesdays and Fridays. So there's a lot to— I would encourage everybody to come to court. I'll just leave it as that.
Well, I appreciate that. I expect there would be some interest among this group. So I'm going to look to some of the other submitted questions. And Judge Blackburn, we've got a question that's been submitted regarding people who are experiencing hardships, who don't know how to access the help that is available. And so how can we better serve people who, for example, are experiencing mental health issues or homelessness? And are there any specific things that your court is doing in that regard?
Well, it's critical that leaders and policymakers work to overcome the stigmas, as I've said, both of mental illness, and I'm working to overcome the stigma of homelessness. Anyone that I see in the court that I feel is homeless and wants housing, I tell them to come back once they're released from jail to my court, mental health court office, and we'll find them housing. We will happily find anyone housing that wants it. When someone successfully completes the court, we don't just turn them loose. We make sure they have housing, they have support. We make certain they have the tools or anything else they need, the support around them. Also, we make sure they have the numbers they need to get anything else they possibly may want. And we tell them, anytime, come back. you know where we are. We're not going anywhere. The mental health office has been here since 2001. Come back, no matter what happens. We're here. We'll help you. And we will. You don't have to pick up new charges. Just come back. We'll find you whatever you need. And frequently, we help people that aren't in the court system because we know the resources that are available. Anybody, all they have to do is pick up the phone and call, and we'll help them.
Well, that's terrific to know. I see questions come through on the chat from Sarah with NCRC, and she'd like to know, is mediation a tool that either of you consider helpful for your courts?
I don't use it in either mental health or veterans court because they've already picked up criminal charges. These are not civil charges. These are criminal charges. And we either take the charges, we'll take them open, unadjudicated, or we'll also take them once they've been adjudicated, which means they're on probation, they've agreed to the probation, and they have a sentence to serve. So we'll take them either way. So no, mediation is not something that's appropriate in either of these courts.
And Judge Walker, do you ever use mediation in connection with environmental court?
No, we don't use mediation in connection with environmental courts because those people who come before us they've received a civil warrant. So we don't do that. We do use it in our regular civil actions. We do use it for that, particularly when people are pro se, meaning they're not represented by an attorney. So let's say landlord tenant, a lot will have, we employ the use of mediation with things like that. So, yeah.
Is that formally incorporated into your process, or is it just incumbent on the judge to raise the notion of mediation? How does that work?
No, it's available. They come available, prepared. We make an announcement that if you want to mediate your dispute, there are mediators there and available. If it doesn't work out, then we're there to try the case and, to render some type of, judgment.
And I'm thrilled to have them in my civil court. Thank God they're there.
Right.
Mediation is a great tool, and NCRC does a fantastic job in the community. What a great resource they are.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question coming through on the chat, and while we talked about environmental court and veterans court and mental health court, are there other specialty courts, and what are they?
There is, it's recovery court, which formerly was called drug court. There is also Cherished Hearts.
What is Cherished Hearts? I'm not familiar with that.
Human trafficking would be another way to describe it.
And who presides over Cherished Hearts?
Judge Anna Escobar.
Okay. Is that new, Judge Blackburn?
It has been, I would say, 2 years. Wouldn't you, Judge Walker?
Yeah, about 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. Judge Rachel Bell also has the community court. So she works with offenders that are in the age group between, I want to say, 18 and 25.
Correct.
So she's established that court in effort to try to help. So there's a lot of specialty courts going on in general sessions. It's help for everybody. And this is a great opportunity to, showcase kind of what we do to let people know where the resources are.
I think it's to Nashville's judiciary, because our judges have recognized that there are some special needs in the community that aren't appropriately addressed by just a traditional judiciary system.
Well, and Laura, one thing that's important to know, the success rate of a regular criminal defendant is probably 60 to 65%. In veterans court, it's an 87% success rate. And in mental health court, it's 83%. And in addition, we this last year waived $110,000 of court costs and fines for those individuals that successfully completed those 2 courts. So that makes a huge difference in those individuals' lives.
You're changing lives for sure.
So they're not coming back through the criminal justice system.
I think this question is probably more applicable to your court, Judge Blackburn, but do you seek out mentors to support the
Yes.
work of the court?
We have a huge mentor program in Veterans Court. Mr. Jordan is a veteran. He has a number of other veterans that work with him in the Veterans Court, and every veteran is assigned to a mentor through that program. So they're not going through it without someone assigned to them and working with them in that program. And we're always looking for other veterans to be mentors.
In the Veterans Court, what's the makeup of men versus women? Do you have many women who come through the program?
It's probably 98% men to women. We probably had less than 10 women since 2014 come through the program.
Interesting. And we've had, Karen has asked the question, why would trafficking not be under like a general criminal court? And so how does that work? Judge Walker, or either of you have any insights?
Well, it's a specialty court. So if you are charged, let's just say a female is charged with a crime and there is a need. So she's been a victim of sex trafficking, or there's some drug issues or things like that, then her case can be referred, her case can be referred to the trafficking court. So it does come under the criminal court umbrella of general sessions.
Gotcha.
And then because of the need, it gets referred out to Cherished Hearts to address, issues that they may be having.
Great. I have one more question that was submitted in advance, and it's they are interested in learning what sort of evidence-based intervention programs are used to support individuals with significant mental health needs. Judge Blackburn, do you rely on any evidence-based intervention programs?
Well, each individual is referred to a mental health program, someone that is a mental health licensed therapist. So they receive either through the Mental Health Co-op or through Centerstone therapy from a licensed therapist. So that is part of their program that they're going through. And that individual is responsible also, either the Mental Health Co-op or Centerstone is prescribing their medication. So all of that is part of the services that they receive through the mental health court. So they're required to go to those therapy sessions. They're required to be on medication. They're required possibly to go to Park Center to receive some type of job training if that's appropriate. There are all these wraparound services that are provided by the court, as well as transitional housing.
Okay. And you mentioned some of the success rates coming out of Veterans Court and Mental Health Court. What sort of data is the court collecting to evaluate the programming there? Is it just recidivism, or what are your metrics?
The court is not necessarily collecting the data. The state of Tennessee is. Mm-hmm. There is a program that, because I don't do it, my staff does it, I can't tell you the name of the program, but every single person and every single thing they do on a daily basis is entered into this program with the state of Tennessee. And the state keeps up with every individual across the state that's in a mental health program or a veterans court program. And they generate that data once a year and tell us 10WITS. 10WITS is the program, and they tell us exactly how our program is performing as opposed to Rutherford County's mental health court or Sumner County's mental health court, and how we're doing and what we're doing, if we're doing it correctly or what we need to change. They give us that data and tell us what we need to do differently or what we should be doing better. So the state of Tennessee compiles that data based on our individuals. Did Timmy come back to every appointment? Did Timmy run when he was supposed to go to Elam for inpatient treatment? They keep up with all that data.
Okay, thanks. So we've talked about a variety of specialty courts, Cherished Hearts, and we've talked about the Recovery Court and Veterans Court and Mental Health Court and Environmental Court. Are there any other specialty courts under discussion? Things that we need in Nashville that we don't have yet?
A DUI court, and Judge Robinson is specifically speaking about creating a DUI court to go along with his recovery court.
And so are there any immediate plans to do a DUI court, or is it just under discussion?
He brought it up a year ago, and Judge Walker, you may know more than I do, but he spoke to me about it last year when I was the presiding judge, that he was very interested in creating one. And I don't know where further he is in that discussion, but I think it would be something that would be very beneficial based on the number of DUIs we have and the difference in treatment that those individuals need as opposed to a drug court treatment.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he might be. I'm not sure where Judge Robinson might be in that process, but it's another area he's very passionate about as well, and it directly correlates to what he currently does with drug court treatment. So we look forward to it. I'm sure it's coming soon.
So I'm gonna switch and ask some personal questions in a couple of minutes, but before I transition to the personal, I want to ask each of you, is there anything else about your specialty courts that we haven't talked about already that you want the participants on today's Zoom call to know?
I think as for me, we kind of summed everything up. Over the past couple of years, I will add, over the past couple of years, I've gotten more active with environmental court. So I will, Renard and I have gone on Referee Hirsch, that is. We'll go on the radio talking about environmental court. We'll do community meetings from time to time through the council members in the various districts and talk about environmental court. Sometimes we'll bring codes in, Bill Penn over at Codes, to talk to folks in the community to kind of get some of their questions and issues resolved. So I've started doing a little bit more of that, just because people in the community really don't know what that is and what that consists of. All they know is, there's a loose dog running the neighborhood, or somebody hadn't mowed the trash or moved the car in 6 months and it doesn't work anymore.
And so, Judge Walker, since you're doing all this outreach on the scope of environmental court, do you ever get, you're so out there in the community, do you ever get calls or texts from people who kind of want to skirt the court process and say, Judge Walker, what do I need to do about this?
People will occasionally call me for environmental court cases as well as domestic cases. I cannot answer those questions, and I let them know I can't answer those questions. I can't answer them. I mean, why else would you call me? But I cannot answer those questions and direct them to, they need to seek legal counsel for that.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much. So Judge Blackburn, what do you want the participants on this Zoom to know about your courts that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, the opportunity to be a judge of mental health and veterans court gives my life meaning, because I know I'm making a difference in the lives of those participants.
So I did get one more question I want to ask you in particular, Judge Blackburn. What are the eligibility requirements for a person to be accepted into mental health court?
Well, I don't know. There is a state evaluation that is done by an individual on my staff, and they go through the state required questions. And based on those questions, there is an evaluation done. If that person is eligible based on that state requirement, then they're eligible. Now, if there's a question, if it's borderline, they cannot have committed a violent crime, murder, rape, aggravated assault, an assault with a weapon, things like that, no. If it's a sex-related crime, we can't take them. If it's someone that has a sex-related history, we can't find housing for someone. We're not going to take someone that has that type of a history. But if there's a question, they'll come to me and they'll ask me, okay, Judge, this is the question. The attorney wants us to take it. Are you willing to take it? Yes or no? Or if it's someone that's been through mental health or veterans court previously and was successful or unsuccessful, and they've picked up new charges. This is the new charges. Are you willing to take it? They'll come ask me. But based on that evaluation, normally they make the decision unless there's some unusual circumstance. So
And Judge
I don't
Blackburn,
make the decision.
how many participants do you generally have at any given time in Veterans Court, and how many do you have in mental health court?
Based on the state, we're allowed to have 75 currently in Veterans Court, approximately 150 in mental health court. If we have more than that, we need to hire additional staff for either one of those courts. We're staffed currently for that.
Okay. Judge Walker, what's the caseload like in environmental court? I know it fluctuates from time to time, but about how many cases are you hearing on either a monthly basis or?
So I don't know on a monthly basis. On a yearly basis, a couple of thousand on a yearly basis. So we keep pretty busy.
It sounds like it. So on the subject of busyness, I theorize that it is very difficult for either of you to escape from your lives as a judge. But when you have an opportunity to disconnect, how do you like to spend your time when you're not on the bench? Judge Walker, what do you like to do?
That's part of my problem. I'm boring. I don't really have any hobbies.
There is not a boring bone in your body, Judge Walker.
So I will admit on Saturdays, and they've canceled those classes due to COVID. Thank you very much. On Saturdays, I do attend a hula hooping class. So,
oh my gosh, that sounds like fun.
She has walked her hula hoop in the courthouse. I've seen it.
That's probably the most. That's probably the most exciting thing that I do to escape. Otherwise, I'll throw on some pajamas and hit the couch and just unwind with like mindless television.
And you're a newlywed, aren't you?
I am. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. I wish you great happiness.
Thank you.
So Judge Blackburn, how do you like to spend your time when you're not on the bench?
Golf. I love to play golf. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and I can get outside. That's my.
You're not in Nashville right now. Are you playing golf where you are?
I am playing golf where I am, enjoying every minute of it. But I'm also on the phone with the courthouse every single day. So
I can only imagine. Well, I'm going to invite our participants, if you have any questions that we haven't covered, please enter a question through the chat function on Zoom. We only have 7 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we cover all of the topics that we need to cover. So I'll go back while we're waiting for additional questions. I'll go back to you all and see, are there any trends that you're seeing in the court system that give you pause? Judge Walker, are you seeing anything that you're thinking, gosh, the court's headed in this direction?
So, it's funny you say that because domestic violence really is my bread and butter on a day-to-day basis. So during COVID, I was specifically watching the numbers so I would be able to have discussions with people because folks were asking me. So during COVID, we did not see an increase. So it's March, April, May. We did not see much of an increase in domestic violence prosecutions. However, when I would consult with folks in the industry, Sexual Assault Center, folks over at the YW, they had a huge increase of calls, huge increase of women who were going to shelters, but somehow that did not resonate into warrants and prosecutions that were been done. So I did see here in June where there's an uptick back up with the cases, but it's nothing that's just like considerable increase. So it's starting to pick back up, I have my theories as to why we really didn't see an increase. Clearly, we're in a pandemic. People are not, you have that isolation factor where, people were at home. So, people were suffering from joblessness. The kids were not in school. You didn't want to, drag the kids into court. I mean, it was a lot of things that was going on, still going on, to be honest, that really prevents people from getting out to get orders of protection as well as criminal warrants for domestic violence. But that was something that I've been watching that's kind of been concerning to me. So we'll kind of watch and see what's going to happen.
Thank you for that. Judge Blackburn, are you seeing any trends that you'd like to comment on?
Well, I will have to say I am very, very pleased with the manner in which the individuals in Mental Health and Veterans Court have maintained their compliance during COVID. Yes, there have been some that have not been compliant. Yes, there's some that have decided to put their sentence into effect because they just couldn't do it. But the majority of the clients that were in Mental Health and Veterans Court have remained compliant, have stayed on their meds, have gone to their appointments, have done whatever they had to do. I can't imagine trying to do your 90 meetings in 90 days over Zoom. I can't imagine trying to do a meeting like that over Zoom, but that's what they've been doing. And they're compliant. So I have been astounded and pleased at the progress of those individuals. I mean, we're holding graduations over Zoom for these people because they've completed Mental Health and Veterans Court, which is amazing to me.
Judge Blackburn, we've got a question from Joan on the Zoom, and she wants to know how COVID has impacted your ability to find or placement in programs and housing for participants.
Well, at first it was oh my God, everyone locked down. So no one was accepting anybody. Probably around the 1st of June, they opened back up and we were able to get people out of jail that had been sitting there for 2.5 months because no one would accept anybody. I mean, nobody was taking anybody, period. Didn't matter. Then also, the jail had all these people testing positive. So they were locking pods. And then CCA had all these women testing positive. So they were locking things. So nobody was moving anywhere, which was horrible. Within about the 1st of June, we were able to start to get people out of jail and finally place people in transitional housing, which was a huge relief, but it took forever.
So my last question to both of you, you both had robust legal careers before you became judges. Is there anything that you miss about being on the bench from the practice of law? Judge Walker, is there anything you miss?
Sometimes I miss getting in the courtroom and duking it out. I do. So I've been a litigator. I mean, I was a litigator for 13, 14 years. So I sometimes miss that, particularly when I see young attorneys that come in and that need some help. I have those moments. It doesn't last long, but I have those moments where I kind of miss litigation.
Judge Blackburn, do you miss anything about the practice of law?
I don't. I absolutely love what I do. I practiced for almost 25 years. So no, I do not miss it. I love what I do.
Well, you certainly serve our communities well, both of you, and we're so grateful to both of you for making time to speak with us about the specialty courts. So on behalf of WPC, let me extend gratitude to both you, Judge Blackburn, and you, Judge Walker, for the time and the insights. I'll remind everyone that our organization's next program will be a book review on August 19th at 6 p.m. And you can go to the website to learn more. And I'm grateful to all of you for participating today. And with that, we will conclude our program. Many thanks.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.